So hello and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I did a video and I've been spending a lot of time at Kyalami. As you can see, just cycling through some of the cars here that we're going to be taking a look at. And yes, I have done a setup for every single GT3 car at Kyalami. Obviously you can see the full range of cars that are there. The only car that I've mitigated from this selection of cars that I've done is the 2015 Mercedes-AMG GT3, and I think that's just because the other Mercedes is there, and I think primarily I don't particularly enjoy driving the Mercedes. But when I started this video, I've spent a lot of time in each of the cars doing the setups for them, and I really have probably spent, I don't know, days and days and days doing these setups, and with all the force feedback through the wheel. And I really do, anyone that suggests that the 2.5 Fanatec base doesn't have enough force feedback, they must have some seriously big arms, because I don't run this at a maximum output at all ever, and I've really been feeling it through my shoulders recently. I've just got a heat pack on here, and while I've been away from the rig, I'm definitely wearing like a shoulder support. Really has taken its toll on my shoulders the last couple of days. So if anyone is suffering with shoulder pain through sim racing, don't think you're alone in that fact. Having googled quite a lot of issues around sim racing and shoulder pain and back pain and many other things, it is so important to get your rig, especially to get a rig, full stop. I know people that are playing maybe on desks at home where they've got an attachment, unless you've got a good driving position, you really are going to be putting a lot of pressure in the wrong places of your body. So really important, even in a sim like my own. Obviously I'm suffering with issues, but I do think I've got the ergonomics set pretty well, to be honest. The wheel's pretty close. I can kind of rest my wrist on the top of the wheel. It's pretty much at shoulder height. I think I've ticked every box into getting the seating position correct when I built the rig, but it is causing a few issues at the minute. Maybe with other training. I do quite a lot of calisthenics training when I'm away from the rig, and obviously I spend a lot of time climbing in my job, so physically I'm pretty fit when it comes to just general well-being. So as much as this is more of an internal issue, I think it's more like internal rotation that's the issue. And obviously when you're turning with the wheel, there's a lot of shoulder impingement that can go on. So definitely worth warming up before you get in the rig. Maybe do some stretches, a bit of hanging maybe. But yeah, I divulged quite a lot there away from what we're going to be doing, and I thought I'd try and keep these videos fairly short if I can, because there's quite a lot of cars to get through and there's a lot of setups to look at, but I'm not going to be doing any driving because I'm going to have to take a bit of time off from driving, so I'll probably end up doing some flight simulator stuff at the minute, or some PUBG stuff in the meantime. But I had some cracking races with another driver just the other day. His name escapes me for now, but I'll put it somewhere on the screen, maybe just down in the right corner or top corner somewhere. But we did spend quite a lot of time batting between us a setup. He shared his setup with me in the Ferrari, and I shared my setup with him, and we both did a number of laps at Spa, because it just blew me away one night racing there, and he was in this 217.5s. And I just thought, where the hell am I going wrong here? So I did have a look at his setup, which for me was utterly undrivable. I don't know how he manages to drive it the way he's set up. We're all very different and we all drive these cars very differently, but it just didn't suit my driving style at all. I'm not going to share that setup, but I'll be sharing my own setup for the Kyalami setup. But one piece of wisdom that really did come out of the setup was the traction control difference. And we'll move in. We'll start out with a Ferrari, And you'll see it's quite an unorthodox way of setting up the traction control. But as you can see there, 141.16. Now in the video that I did a 140, I think it was a 141.5 or 141.6. But having changed the traction control, that was the difference that it made. It was nearly half a second. I don't think I made any other changes, but I will share the setup that I used to set that 141.1 lap. And I really was on for a 140, which was just mind-blowing for me. So I'll quickly browse over this setup. As you can see, at 29 Celsius. I'm not going to spend much time here. The only thing that I will point out is that the cambers, someone else pointed this out on one of my other YouTube videos, that when you come to do races, especially in the 2020 season, the cambers are absolutely maxed out at 4.5 at the front and 3.5 at the rear. So I've tried to incorporate that in the setup. Obviously, if you're using it in the 2018-2019 season, you might very well be able to add a little bit more camber, which could give you some more grip through the corners. But obviously you're going to negate tyre life over a longer period of time. So it is good to run as little camber as you can, really. But this was the thing. Usually I would be running, I think I ran 7 and 7 during my first run. But this knowledge of wisdom that came out of the setup at Spa was to just run traction control 9 and nothing on TC2, and it just astounded me how much more acceleration and how much more grip there seemed to be coming out off turn 1 at Spa. And in a number of the slower corners, it's the acceleration off the slow corners just seemed so much better. And this is definitely something I'll try in other cars that run TC and TC2, just negating the whole of TC2 and just playing around with the traction control 1, which I call it. So definitely something worth looking at. And the other thing I really would mention is I've run a number of laps in a number of the cars, obviously, some of them a lot more than others, and the PSI, even if you have the PSI at 2 difference, once they're at sort of temperature, and I mean in races as well, that can make such a difference to getting a good lap time, and just changes the whole dynamic of the car. 0.2 of a difference. So just something to bear in mind when you are setting your cars up. You really want to be hitting it at a minimum of 27.5. You really don't want to ever be under that whilst you're running your laps. If you go to 27.8, it's a good window, and maybe if you're getting like 28.5, you're going to be losing so much grip. So it really is important that even those slight differences in PSI can make, I'd say, maybe half a second difference per lap, which is huge really when you're at the top of your game. So just looking through the setup itself, I'm not going to go into it too much because we've got so many other cars to cover. I'm just going to cover the 3 cars in this video. But that's the setup for the Ferrari. Running quite a lot of downforce at the rear, and obviously depending on whether the track temperature gets hotter, you might want to open out these brake ducts to try and keep the tyres cooler. It's generally not something I'd do for the brakes, but something I would do for the tyres. And obviously we're always trying to hit in the OMI section probably about 90-degree temperature in the tyre. Anything under 100 and above maybe 80 is where you want to see the actual temperature of the tyre. So just starting out with the other portion of this video, and I wanted to just talk over the lap as we come into it. Obviously you can see I've just been setting the field of view and I wanted to just show that, just so that you know the sort of view I'm using. So coming down into turn 1 then, braking at the 100-yard board on the right hand side there, just trying to get the car nice and slowed down and turned in, really come down through the gears pretty quickly, trying to get the least line of resistance. Don't go too far wide on the right hand side here because there's just no grip. But we're definitely trying to not scrub any of the rear tyres coming through that section and get a nice acceleration off the corner. Coming into this lovely right-hander, and then we're just gonna ease through 4th gear, never shifting down to 3rd gear in the Ferrari, then braking just after the 50-yard board, trying to mount this curb a little bit, run the car out wide, use all the exit, and then again we're just going to take a little stab of the brake pedal as we come into here, staying in 3rd gear, and again doesn't hold as nicely as a BMW, the front end of the car through that section. But as we come up and over the hill, just trying to get down through the gears pretty quickly, clip some of this inside curb if you can, and then just getting back on the power again, trying not to light up those rear tyres. Coming into one of the most awkward of the corners really, this right-hander braking, get the car nicely out wide, nice tight line in. I probably missed a good apex there to be honest. And then just trying to carry as much speed through, a tiny dab of the brake, a little bit of a slide, and then we're going to be heading for the line, just braking after the 50-yard board, trying to get the power down. And generally I probably would change to TC1 coming off there if I was using that. Looking at the lap time there, as you can see, a 141.6, but I have had a 141.1, so a little bit more improvement there. So the next car in the lineup, the Honda NSX GT-R. Now this car surprised me, as you can see, a 141.2, and I'm not even sure if this has got TC1 and TC2. So we'll just have a quick look over this setup, and it surprised me how quickly I got that lap time as well. It just seems such a drivable car, especially for my style of driving. And as you can see there, I'm running 6 and 6, so this might very well benefit from running a different traction control. Maybe again something maybe like this might be quicker. I've got no idea, and I haven't got the opportunity right now to try it, but definitely something special. I think that was a little bit of wisdom there. And one other little tip that Daniel Arlotti mentioned to me, obviously you can see 26.3, 26.3 at the front and 26.1 at the rear. Now as you go into here, you usually start off with number pit stop strategy 1, which is a very random tyre pressures, but if you switch to 2, I'm not saying this works at every track and on every car, because it just doesn't, but sometimes if you switch to 2, it will actually put in the tyre pressures from the front page, which is very useful for when you come to doing your stops, especially if you've got maybe you're doing a day to night race, and as you go into the night session you're wanting to change onto a set of tyres that are a different pressure, because obviously through the colder evening sessions the tyres will lose pressure. And like I said, 2 degrees difference in, or 0.2 psi difference in tyre pressures can make a huge difference to the lap time. I won't say a huge difference, but maybe when you start looking at like a full degree of difference, you're going to really notice that in the amount of grip that's available. So changing tyres, moving on to a different set in the strategy, you might not have thought about how much the track temperature is going to change, and you were going to do this on the fly. So sort of mid-race, as you're coming in to do your pit stop, you could maybe just increase the PSI. Say if you lost 1 PSI of pressure, you could change to a new set with that adjustment, and you could adjust that on the fly during the game. So just looking over the rest of the setup, like I said, I'm not going to go too deep into these. One thing I have noticed though is that the steering ratio, definitely best off setting that at the higher end when you start setting a car up. And if you feel like you're having to put too much lock into the wheel, it just seemed to feel better to know that I'm adding less lock to the wheel by starting at the higher end and reducing it. Not spent too much time going over the dampers. That it seems to add very little I won't say very little, but the smaller gains come from the dampers. So although I've made slight adjustments here and there, I haven't spent too long on this particular setup, but I was amazed to get into the 141s and low 141s so quickly. And again, that's at 35 Celsius, so I'm kind of hopeful that at 29 Celsius I would be into the 140s, and who knows, making the adjustment to the traction control could be well into the 140s. I would love to have said I've got a 140 for you, but I haven't. So moving into the Honda, and just going through this just so you can see the field of view adjustments that I'm making. And I do choose to use the dashboard display on this one just because of how far down I've actually set the actual dashboard. It just seems to give me a better, I do like to see the bonnet, just gives you a good idea of reference as to what's ahead of you. So coming into turn 1, obviously just accelerating off the line there, and as you can see, changing to traction control 1. Obviously things might be different once we adjust those traction controls, but I do enjoy coming off the corner in 1. So braking again at the 100-yard board, just really trying to get the car slowed down. Doesn't seem to slow as quickly as the Ferrari, but still it's not too bad. Again, getting the car out wide on the right hand side, just getting it line in. As you can see, I come down to second gear rather than staying in third as we did in the Ferrari. Sticking on the left hand side, just use as much of that curb as you can. Just partially through the corner there, you see me just swap down into third gear, just seem to have better acceleration. Down to second, probably missed that inside curb again, but just running the car wide. Coming into here, staying in third gear, just trying to get some of that curb. Probably not the best at running the curbs, the Honda, nowhere near as good as the BMW, but still not too bad. But again, getting the car, first gear really does seem to slow the car really well through that section. Again, just trying to reduce as much as you can. The wheel spin coming off those corners is so important to get good acceleration. So bringing the car out wide on the left hand side, and it really does, you can see it just pulls the car right in first gear through there. Maybe lost quite a bit of time, to be honest. Just managed to regain it back through that last section and have a nice run through this last corner and across the line. But hopefully we can see the timetable here as well. And you can see just a handful of laps, really, 8 laps to get the car into the very early into the 101s, 141s. A car that took me quite a while to get to grips with this car. Some very subtle differences in gear changes of the Porsche 991 GT-R. And as you can see here, 141.8, not particularly the best car I've driven at Kyalami. Seemed to be very different, shifting through some of the corners, holding second gear through some of the other corners, which I didn't in other cars. So just load that one in. As you can see, there's a heck of a lot more camber to be able to add on the Porsche, but in the 2020 season it's just not possible to add that amount of camber. Again, at the rear, I'm not even sure if you would actually get away with 4. It might very well be 3.5, but for this setup I have used 4 for some reason. And again, this could very well be the case of adjusting this to like this, or maybe even more. It depends how much torque comes through the car. Works beautifully well on the Ferrari, but maybe not so in the Porsche. But again, something that you're going to have to see. But I was using 6, as you can see there. Going through the rest of it, as you can see, I've got a massive amount of steering lock, so it just stops the car feeling too twitchy by increasing the steering ratio. And I remember doing a setup at Bathurst where I'd added a very low steering ratio in, and when I went back to drive it, it was just super twitchy. and just opening out the steering ratio does seem to make the car feel maybe not so nimble through some of the corners, but it feels like you're positioning the car where you want it more accurately. So some subtle changes maybe to the dampers, and I never really feel a lot of benefit from the front splitter, and I probably didn't in this particular case. It's more really the ride height of the car that sort of really makes a difference with the Porsche. So going straight into the lap in the Porsche, not able to see what field of view I'm using, but hopefully you can adjust that. Braking at the 100-yard board as we've done in every car. Trying to get this car slowed down seems much harder, but it's totally different coming in through this section, I think. Really early shift down to second gear just to try and keep the momentum in the car. Really did take a while to get used to this car, but using all the left hand side, I'm sure I changed down to third gear there, but I obviously just held on to fourth gear. Using some of that inside curb, doesn't run the curbs as well either, obviously struggling right out on the grass through that section. Again, just doesn't feel like it's hooked up the front end, but it looks pretty stable through that section. Probably just had a really good run. Just down to first gear, and again just trying not to light up those rear tyres on the exit. Just felt so much slower, the Porsche. It just seemed to take an age to get into the 141s. This corner was probably like the Achilles heel, but staying in second gear through here really did help just gather some lap time back, really. Always seems to be running wide through that section as well. A really tough car to drive, I think. It is a tuning nightmare, I think, the Porsche, but still a lot of people drive it. I'm not sure if we can see the lap time on this one.
Well done, mate. The fastest lap so far.
There we go. A number of laps though to get actually into the 141s. So one last one that we're going to look at in this session, although I didn't film the lap during a hot lap session. I've just got the race footage for this car, but a setup that I was doing for a friend, so I wanted to just add this in here. The Nissan GT3, the GT-R, a very different car to drive than many of the other cars, and a lot of rotation comes from the release of the pedal, the brake pedal. A tough car to drive, but even running much less camber than is available, really. Very subtle changes, and even at the rear of the car there is still more camber that we can use. No benefit from the TC2, so definitely one to look at is using, I'm sure that would have been brake pads one. In fact, we're not actually looking at the setup yet, so there we go. So let's load that in. So there we go, I have actually maxed out the cambers, a little bit of a change in the setup there. So traction control 3, and obviously you can see a number of laps to be able to get to where I wanted it. Slightly lower on the steering ratio, and very much a forward biased brake balance, and absolutely maxed out on the rear wing, so it could be a sitting duck down some of the straights, but yeah, a very tough car to drive. So starting in this session, as you can see, it's not a hot lap session, it was a qualifying session, but a number of laps to actually be able to get into the 141s, but never managing it during this session. So this is the second lap during this race. Braking again at the 100-yard board. And it's just the release of the pedal in this car. It just plays so much of a part in getting the grip through the corner. just holding third gear through there as well. You'd be tempted to come down to second, but it's got so much torque, this engine. It just pulls off the corner much better in third gear. Again through here, just staying in fourth gear. Never really using first gear in this car at all, even through the well, I'm sure I will use it through the top corner, we'll see. Yeah, coming down to third gear, does run the curves much better than the previous two cars we've seen, but still a tough car to drive, the Nissan. So see if we come right the way down. I didn't think we did. First gear just slows the car so much. Definitely best to stay in second gear. I'll be interested to see if I come through here using first gear as well. As you can see, I'm also bouncing quite a lot on the force feedback in the red, but I guess the wheel does just feel really good how it's set. There's a lot of bumps in Kyalami, almost on the grass. But yeah, just try and steer clear of first gear. Any slow corner in the Nissan, it just slows it down way too much. There we go.
Well done, mate. Good luck.
Out of all the cars that I've driven here and that we'll look at over the next couple of videos, three cars that really stick out to me as just easy cars to drive at Kyalami. The Audi R8 just seemed perfectly at home at Kyalami. The Ferrari and the Honda, I just found them so easy to drive at this circuit. Obviously the BMW speaks for itself. We've seen that in another video that I've done, and if you haven't watched that video, I'll link it up in the description. Just the best way to really attack Kyalami and just to reduce your lap times. I've had a number of drivers already messaged me to say thank you for the last video, and that they've actually knocked maybe 1 or 2 seconds off the lap time, which is huge for some drivers. So yeah, a few other things that I did want to cover is issues with the game. I know even over the past couple of days I've had so many issues with disconnections from the multiplayer lobbies. I've had wheel disconnections midway through a race. I just can't change gear, I can't do anything. I can steer the car, but all the buttons on the wheel don't work, and I've had to reset the game. We've still got this bombshell really from the first round of races, and you can't enter any of these, they still don't load up, but the current, we've just got one session, which as you can see there, I think I did this very early on, and I cannot get anywhere near this now because the version of the game has changed. I couldn't get anywhere near that lap time, although the lap time has changed actually. Looking at that, there was BSR wins was at the top of the leaderboard, so maybe I'm just not as good in the Mercedes. I don't particularly enjoy driving the Mercedes, but I didn't think I could get anywhere near that lap time when I went and tried to have another go at it just recently, but still we should have more to go at by now. The game released over a year ago, and this just seems to be a little bit of a failing from D3T to develop the game further. I know they're working on so many other things, and I have emailed them just recently, hopefully waiting on an email back regarding the game. Actually runs on the Unreal Engine 4 platform, and with the release of Unreal Engine 5, I really do hope that it's something that will come to the game, and we'll look at a lot better lighting models and stuff like that within the game. I've no idea how much work is behind the scene to add that into the game. I'm sure there's always stuff getting done. There's patches for PC constantly, but in the driver option, still something that really does fail me. When we look at the ratings, the competition, I went into a competition server the other day and there was absolutely nobody in it. Whether competition ratings actually work, I've got no idea. because there's just no one in the lobby to compete with. A lot of these don't seem to be changing either. And if we come all the way down, the 2020 season onwards, really, just nothing's recording at all. And I've done plenty of races within the 2020 season, so none of the stats seem to be building. Although I've got them, I don't particularly think they make any difference to how I approach a race, because I just don't see them changing, to be honest. And customization, I just cannot believe that we still cannot go higher than this in the game to change the first name and to introduce your abbreviations. You can do it, I'm sure you could do it for the other drivers in your team, but you cannot do it for you, the main driver of the car. A lot of problems still with replays not saving. I've been on a number of races, 2 full it says. As we can see, I've got 1 saved replay and 1 saved highlights. I don't particularly think that's full at all, so when you get an error message to say that the thing's full, there's definitely errors there. Just have a look at the servers. We're at 10 past 11 British Standard Time, and we've got 6 drivers in the lobbies, which is shocking really. A total number of 30 players online. So yeah, there's a lot of people moving away from the game, I think. And one thing that still just slightly annoys me still is this blurred vision in the showrooms. Really think this needs to go back to how it used to be. Obviously we've got from one to the next page, we've got perfect clarity, and then it switches to the next one, it's just out of shot. So I'm not sure what's going on there. But again, I think Unreal Engine 5 will bring some definitely different lighting effects to the game. But yeah, I'll leave you with the next bit of footage that I've got. This was from a race at Zolder where I didn't particularly manage to get back to the grid in time before the race started, and I just thought I'd see where the race would go, starting from the pit lane. Obviously we've still got the issue with the 30 and 20 second warnings, they're still not there, but I'm not sure when the next patch is coming, to be honest. There was the link from Sam Sage, I think his name is, as part of D3T or 505, that was mentioning all the changes that came with this next patch to the game, but with the current patch and the upcoming patches, still no word on the street at all. I've not heard anyone mention the next iteration of the game. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'll leave you with the replay of the race, or the in-car highlights. Ciao for now. So then, as we launch into this last section, I will just put on screen the return sort of emails that I've had back from D3T and 505 with regards to the question I asked about Unreal Engine 5, and the responses pretty disappointing responses from both companies really. One sort of passing the buck to the other, and then the other one just asking really to put it in the forum and get people talking about it. I'm assuming, I can only assume, that with the game running on Real Engine or Unreal Engine 4, it will port over to Unreal Engine 5, and it's probably a little trick up the sleeve at 505. This would be a massive update to the game. It would change it so much, but whether that's even an opportunity for the team to develop, I've got no idea. So I guess it'll be a case of wait and see if this occurs on PC. But anyway, looking at the race that we're about to watch, obviously in the garage there we're missing that 30-second warning and the 20-second warning. So important, I think, coming into these races. Just that a little pointer to get yourself ready, get the car back on track. And I don't think it was my intention to totally miss out on getting to the grid. just too late arriving, and then that forces you to start in the pit lane. So I'm on pole position, turn 1 at Zolder. Is often a bit of a nightmare, but it could have been a good thing to miss turn 1 at Zolder. Even if you qualify further back in the grid, as long as the starting sequence actually works. As you can see there, it controls locked until the green flag. Now obviously if you watch Formula 1, once all the well, it's probably the same in GT3 racing, once all the cars have passed the start grid, they should be able to proceed onto the race circuit. Obviously you can see the controls are locked, and I think that's worked perfectly in this scenario. It doesn't work like this at some other circuits, and I've got no understanding why. So eager to get back out, and always remember that little turn there, there's no grip at all. So looking at the cars coming back to the track, there's obviously been a first corner incident. Just trying to navigate through the pack really now. Don't know if any of these cars have picked up damage from that turn 1 incident, so just giving them a bit of a wide berth. And again, obviously we've sat in the garage for a little bit, so the tyres at 24 will offer absolutely no grip at all, and it really is a case of feeling how much grip's available. Anything up to about 26 psi, there's just literally no grip in these tyres, so really do be careful early on, or if you're using a tyre pressure that's as low as 26, you're just not getting anywhere near the sort of grip that you should be getting, especially when you're running at around 27.5 psi. Always be prepared to stop in this scenario. When you see a crash like that, it doesn't matter if the other guy's got in front. I just think it's always best just to slow down and get past the incident. The number of times I've actually tried to plough on and keep your foot to the floor through incidents like that, and you just get nowhere. You just end up getting tagged off someone coming back off a barrier or something. So really I've started to slow down when I see accidents these days. So just trying to run the car wide through that section, and I think throughout this whole race I've literally just tried to set this car up at Zolder, and I've just been running a number of sessions trying to get the tyres into the right window, trying to make adjustments to the car to get better grip through some of the corners, whether to run a better ride height, especially to navigate through this little chicane, whether to attack the curb or not.
Car on the right. Clear on the right.
Some people braking a little bit earlier than they need to be, especially when he got the outside line, but I guess I'm catching him quickly, so I could just say thanks for that. So quickly up to 4th place, considering we came out in 12th, and there's so many people navigate that section of the circuit very slowly. Try and use as much of the inside curb as you can. Always slowing it around the 100-yard board for that one. I'll sometimes change to traction control 1 coming off that corner to get a good acceleration. Braking probably a little bit too late on that occasion, trying to get under the bridge to brake, but I think it should be just sort of between the bridge and the 100-yard board braking for that last sort of chicane section.
Well done, mate. Good lap.
I kind of braked just before the board there. You see the car coming out of the pit. We've got another car gone off to the left. I think he's continued off into God knows where. But yeah, just always wary of people coming out of the pit. Obviously very thankful of that blue flag driver just pulling off quite quickly. There are some people in these lobbies that do pay attention to the blue flags, and the guy up front there just totally out braking himself.
Yellow flag ahead. Be careful.
And taking first place pretty easily really, but when you're starting out from the pit lane, invariably you're thinking, oh well, that's my race over, I've got no chance here. But yeah, just using those the sleeping policeman curves as you come through that section. The track is actually wider than the curb section, but don't be too greedy over those curves. You're sort of trying to run over the middle of them. I'll try and talk through it as we come through there again on another lap. But hopefully I'll try and get into the 129s. I would be looking really at a 128 is my aim. Try and run the middle of the tyres over those curbs. Not fully over them, but like the tyre through the middle of those little sleeping policemen. So again, trying to brake just as we sort of get to the, maybe it's a shadow on the circuit as we come through that section. A very tricky corner this. I sometimes wonder whether to stay in third or whether to drop to second gear, tighter through and then get more speed on the exit. It was very much a process of discovery through these number of laps. Still just trying to get the car set up, trying to find the right braking points. Obviously running way too much curb there, but just look at how much time it shaved off. Didn't feel comfortable at all through there, running that much curb. I'm surprised to have gotten away with it. So again, just running the tyre through those middle of the sleeping policemen, but certainly don't hit those on that right-hander section. They just really ruin the car's chance of getting good traction off the corner. Seems to look like a brake very late during watching this footage back, but I do generally apply the brake at the 100-yard board for that last hairpin. And again, probably just before the bridge I'm braking. So finally into the 129s.
Fastest lap of the race, man. Good job.
So yeah, definitely try and pick up that inside curb as you come through there and run the car out wide as well. Try and sort of clip that inside apex and maybe even use some of that outside curb. Really is a exploration of discovery these laps. Just trying to see if I can get faster and faster. Coming off this corner as well, I always try and carry as much speed through there as you can because you're on the straight section. So that'll all translate to top end speed coming through here. And I do think it is a better line, but I've seen drivers on PCUs going through there and they do really bounce over that first curb, and it just destroys the lap time on console.
Warning for exceeding
I see I just cut the track there, but look at the amount of time I gained. But that would have definitely been disallowed if you were doing it in a hot lap session. But yeah, I do like the one, or you sort of get 3 chances. A little yawn. But yeah, see, coming off this curve there, it doesn't really help you running that inside set of sleeping policemen. I lost maybe just a little bit of a tenth, maybe a few thousandths of a second. But I do tend to try and aim to hit that first corner. So I'm really just running fast laps here. Literally just trying to break into the 128s. That would definitely be my aim for a setup at Zolder. It's a cracking circuit, and one I enjoy every time I come back to it. You might just notice PSI wise running 28.7 on one of the rear tyres. I'm sure it was literally 128 a second ago, both of the rear tyres. But I'll be losing so much acceleration off some of the corners with the tyre pressures that high. Especially if you ever reach the 29s in dry conditions, it'll almost be very slidey. The right hand side of the car really is getting punished tyre pressure wise, so this I definitely wouldn't recommend running these kind of tyre pressures. The best tyre there really is the front right tyre. That's definitely in a good window for pressure. So final lap then, and just looking at the fuel there, just 9 litres of fuel left in the tank. It's probably a good amount of, the right amount of fuel really to have on board for this race, especially with the BMW just absolutely chomping through the fuel. All the other GT3 cars will run much less fuel consumption. Whether that's actually an error on the part of the developers or intentional, I've got no idea. But as you can see there, we're in 27.4 now on that front right tyre. It's still way too hot on that rear left tyre, but the other tyre is starting to settle down. We do run a number of laps where the tyres do get quite hot initially, or the PSI does seem to go up quite substantially in the first number of laps, and then it begins to settle down again. So the testing portion of setting a car up really is important, or if you're running races, make a note of the tyre pressures and make sure you're adjusting them at the end of each race. As soon as you finish the race, it's important just to come back into the pit, make the adjustments to the tyre pressures that you're running, and I don't know, if you stay in the same lobby and running the same setup again, you can gradually start to see the lap times come down, just even adjusting the tyre pressures. So if that's all that you're capable of doing at the minute, definitely worth making those adjustments. Just a little flash of the lights there as I finish. And then obviously just watching a bit of the obligatory replays, try and save it. Sometimes you might save it. I certainly know that having made that, saved the highlights from this race, it didn't save saving the replay. I'm not sure if the replay actually saved or not, but I do generally enjoy watching back some of the replays, and they can be quite useful for YouTube content, just adding a few replays here and there. But one thing I have found with the BMW and a number of the cars with these replays, you can barely hear the car just now. On some of the replays they start and there isn't actually any engine sound at all through the replays, and then eventually the audio comes back again. But obviously returning back to the pit, just wanting to look over my own lap times, see what I was getting. Something I'll do in every race really, just to see where my fastest sector times were. But yeah, thanks for watching guys. Until next time, hopefully things will get better and my arm or shoulders will get back to how they should be, and we can start running some more laps. Ciao for now.